Of course, Kathleen Wynne is not the only female provincial party leader. Ontario's New Democrats have Andrea Horwath, and the Progressive Conservatives have a woman as deputy leader. Does having more of a female presence in the legislature change how politics are done at Queen's Park? And to get into that, we ask Christine Elliott, the aforementioned deputy leader of the PC party and member for Whitby-Oshawa, and Cheri DiNovo, NDP member for Parkdale High Park. And welcome you two back to TVO. Good to have you both here. I want to drop this poll number on you here, because shortly after Kathleen Wynne won that convention at Maple Leaf Gardens back in January, somebody did a poll and found that 70% of Canadians thought her victory was a significant breakthrough for women in politics. Do you agree with that?
Well, I think so. And in terms of top leadership, now we have 6 female premiers across Canada, and that is something. I mean, the vast majority of Canadians now have women provincial leaders. So yes, it is a breakthrough.
You think it's a significant breakthrough?
Yeah, about 85% of Canadians actually have a female leader as a premier of the province. And every time there's a first for a woman, it's a breakthrough. So I would agree.
5 of the 6 top jobs in cabinet. Let me go through this. Premier, deputy premier, health minister, education minister, chair of cabinet. So not finance, but these other 5 are all women. Now, I don't think either one of you have sat at the cabinet table before. But from your vantage point, does having that many women in those high positions provide for a different form of governing from what you've been able to see? Christine Elliott.
Not from what I've seen so far. I mean, basically, we're dealing with the same group of people that made the same decisions before, and they're still making the same decisions now. So I wouldn't say that it's changed the conversation significantly on the issues that we're dealing with. I see it's sort of a continuation of the same old pattern.
I was actually very disappointed to see so few women around the cabinet table with Kathleen Wynne at the head. I thought they'd aim for the 50% mark, and I know under Ray, for example, we had way more women sitting at the cabinet table in a percentage sense than now.
11 of 25, I think,
yeah,
under Bob Ray?
so I was disappointed by the number of women around the cabinet table.
Okay, but never in history have this many women had such important positions around the cabinet table. You've got to grant that, right?
Yes, but I would go along with Christine in the sense that if we're seeing the same old politics, that kind of undermines the change. And again, I think we're seeing partly the same old politics because there's not enough women sitting around there. Where are all the other women? Half of the Liberals are in cabinet. I mean, they have the largest cabinet, have the largest cabinet that we've ever seen, and yet so few women in a percentage sense. That's unfortunate with a female premier. I would have hoped that would be one of her first priorities.
What's your view on that?
Well, I would agree. I think that we need to, if we really want to take advantage of having more women there, we need to sort of change the tenor of the conversation. But again, we still have the same people there making the same decisions, the same people that made the decisions with respect to the cancellation of the gas plant, something that we're all talking about right now. They're totally unapologetic about it. So some things don't change, notwithstanding that you have a few more women around the cabinet table.
Okay, well, let's really get down to the basics here. Do you think having women in senior positions in whatever, government, opposition parties, brings something different to the table? Genuinely. Does it?
Yes. Ideally, if you're starting afresh, if you're taking a look at a whole new government and you had more women there, it changes the kind of conversation you have. Some of the issues that you have become perhaps more pronounced, and you do have a different tone around the place. So I think there are some positives that can be achieved in that. I just think it's unfortunate in the present situation that's not what's happening.
Do women genuinely bring something different in approach to governing, decision-making, that kind of thing?
I think we do because we're socialized differently. I mean, for example, our model of parliament is based on a war model. You know, we're more than 2 sword lengths apart from each other across the aisle. That's for a reason. The mace is a weapon that's carried around. Women are not socialized to be at war with one another, so we're better negotiators. I think women are better conciliators. I think women are better decision makers ultimately, and I think more to the point, just from a civil rights sense, it's very, very important to represent the population that you serve. And so we should be 50% women in our cabinets, in our governments, and electables. Having said that, there are lots of women who have been elected to positions of power. I totally disagree with. Imelda Marcos for one, Margaret Thatcher for another. Bless her cotton socks, and God rest her. But I mean, so it's not just about that, but it is also an equity issue, and it's the equity issue I think that we have to focus on.
Can I just do a little follow-up here, because you've raised something I've never thought about before. If women were designing how the seats were arranged on the floor of the legislature, are you saying they'd maybe be in a circle and everybody would sit with everybody else, as opposed to one side over here, two sword lengths apart, hammer and tong, away we go?
If we designed the legislature, who knows? I mean, it's an interesting thought. Yes, I mean, I think we're better negotiators. Negotiation is better done in a circle than it is in a war style across from each other. And quite frankly, for the most part, again, this is socialization, but we have better taste, so it might be a little prettier.
So at least be designed and look nicer.
Exactly.
Is that right? Okay. Well, you know, Margaret Thatcher's name has come up here. You'd be pretty hard-pressed to say there was something about Margaret Thatcher that expressed women doing politics differently. Would you agree with that?
I think that Margaret Thatcher had her own unique style, and she was sort of you can't take from that every woman politician needs to be like her, but I think that what was different about her was that she was strong in her resolve. She did not back down. She was, whether you agreed with the decisions she made or not, she let her presence be known, and she made decisions and stuck with them. So there's a lot to admire about Margaret Thatcher, even if you don't agree with exactly everything all of her policies. But her, as a woman leader, she was strong and fearless and much to be admired.
Well, okay. Would you have rather had Margaret Thatcher as a woman in power in Great Britain, or would you have rather had Michael Foot or one of the other Labour leaders she beat along the way?
Definitely one of the Labour leaders she beat along the way. And this is a woman who supported apartheid, lest we forget. Mm-hmm. So absolutely.
Well, she didn't support apartheid. She just didn't agree with the way of getting rid of it the way everybody else did.
I mean, there are a number of decisions she made that would, I think, be very, very questionable. So from my vantage point, no, being a woman is not enough to have me vote for you. But should we be electing more women? Yes.
Okay. Let's actually try to find out if things have changed at all at Queen's Park since Kathleen Wynne became Premier. Because she has said, excuse me, that she wants to do politics differently insofar as more collaborative, more conversational, less confrontational, which I guess some would argue that evokes a kind of a feminine style of politics. It speaks more to her gender. Would you say that that style has changed the way you do business at Queen's Park? Does it look that way to you?
I would say that nothing really has changed. I mean, we've heard what Kathleen Wynne is saying. She wants to have more respectful conversations. She wants to be more collaborative.
Well, that's already different from the previous guy.
Well, but she's saying that, but she's not doing that. We still have the same issues with respect to the gas plant cancellations, for example. She wants to be open and transparent, but are we hearing anything about what has happened with the cancellation of the Oakville plant? No, we had to wait for the Auditor General to come forward with the Mississauga plant. She said that she wanted to have more local decision-making with respect to wind turbines and energy projects in primarily rural municipalities. Well, we had a private member's bill yesterday that came forward that would have been a perfect opportunity, but the Liberals voted it down. So I hear what she's saying, but actions speak louder than words, and we're not seeing that being put into action.
Okay, but let me follow up with this. The last guy on Election Day in 2011 came in and said, I'm one seat short of a majority, this is a major minority, and governed that way. Premier Wynne has basically been spending the last couple of months that I can see trying to reach out to you, had some pretty good meetings from what I understand with Andrea Horwath in order to get stuff done. I mean, that's different already, isn't it?
Well, let's put it this way. We definitely want to get stuff done in the NDP, and that's why I was elected. Unfortunately, I'm hearing the same things that Christine is hearing. Certainly the gas plant, we're not hearing a direct apology. We're not hearing somebody taking responsibility. That's huge. I mean, this is hundreds of millions of dollars that could have gone to feed our 1 in 7 children who live in poverty, among other things. But the budget will be the test. When the budget comes, and we hear it's coming this spring, then that's where the rubber hits the road. We'll see whether she actually delivers on all of those utopian things she was talking about in the throne speech. Will she actually deliver? Will she actually come through on what the minimal demands we've asked her to or not? And that will be the beginning probably of a different kind of conversation, I would think.
Okay, but I'm going to push you on this a little more, because when Dalton McGuinty and Andrea Horwath, your leader, had meetings, that didn't go well. And, nobody kept records, and they came out of it, and both sides were saying, you agreed to this, no, you agreed to this, and it really became very poisonous. Your leader and Premier Wynne have already had, I think, a few meetings, and basically they seem to have gone pretty well. And the new Premier seems to be pretty collaborative, at least on the surface, on the way she's doing things. Isn't that different?
The spin is different. The seems to be
You're
is
not going to give it
different.
to her, are you?
Well, I'm just speaking from experience of the House, and Andrea has been up every day, hammering about the gas plant, hammering about the chemotherapy mix-up, which has affected people's lives very directly, and not seeing somebody standing up and saying, yes, it is our responsibility. We will try to make this right. We will give you the figures on the Oakville plant. No, we're seeing the same old evasion. And on the chemotherapy, we're not seeing a health minister who is the deputy leader stand up and say, yes, it is my health ministry's responsibility that something went very grievously wrong with the chemotherapy drugs that were given to patients. We're not seeing that. We're seeing the same old dance. Now, I just ascribe this to the same old, perhaps some of the same old advisors in the back room who are advising them to behave a certain way. But, I've worked with Kathleen. I like Kathleen. It's not personal. But you can't just say you're going to do politics differently and then stand up and do it the same old way.
Okay, let's finish up on this, because I want to ask about your leader, who is in an unprecedented position in terms of party leaders in Ontario. When they have that election debate, whenever that takes place, he's going to look across at his two rivals and he's going to see two women, which has never happened before. Does he have to do his job differently given that gender dynamic?
I don't think he has to do his job differently. We've put some pretty bold ideas out there. We're in the process, as all parties are, of crafting a platform. And I think that we have some ideas that are going to appeal across the board to people in Ontario. Perhaps the tone may change a little bit, but I think the basic propositions will remain the same.
Not policy changes, I don't mean that. But, if there are three testosterone-filled men at a leaders' debate, they can all be, and we've seen it in the past, they can all be fairly macho jerks with each other. Tim Hudak can't really get away with that this time, can he?
Well, as I say, I think the tone will have to change because it's a different dynamic. And so,
does he know that?
Yes, absolutely. He's very well aware of it. And as a matter of fact, he was at an all-women's event earlier this week. Equal Voice was at Queen's Park, and he came to support the women that were there and to all of the young women who are contemplating careers in politics. So, yeah, he's very well aware of that and is certainly cognizant of issues that are important to women, and we'll be speaking to those.
I notice when he does press conferences, he brings you a lot now. Why do you think?
Well, I think a lot of them recently have been to do with healthcare, and I was involved with our latest white paper on healthcare about a healthier Ontario. So I think it was because of that. He's been taking various critics with him, depending on what the subject is of the white paper.
Even to the non-healthcare ones, he's bringing you along as well, to some of them.
Well, I am the deputy leader, and I often fill in for him at things that he's not able to go to, and the extent that I can go with him, I'm happy to do that.
Okay, I'm going to get your take on that. Why is he bringing Christine Elliott all the time?
I think he brings her along because she's so good at her job, and I think that's the feminist answer. If you don't bring a woman along, it's not because you don't want to be seen with women, it's because they're maybe not the best at their job. Christine's the best at her job, and so she's there. And I think that's what we women have to herald, that we are the best at what we do. That's why we're sitting at Queen's Park. We got elected by our constituency for a reason. We, earned our jobs for a reason there, our critic portfolios or responsibilities. It's earned. It's not because we're women. But we are women and we are there. Isn't that fantastic? And I think we just have to herald that. And I think when, Tim Hudak goes up against those two women, he's going to have his hands full.
Well, we're glad both of you were here today. Christine Elliott, Cheri DiNovo, good of you to visit us at TVO tonight. Thanks so much.
Great to be here.
Support Ontario's public television. Donate at tvo.org.